Thomas Zekveld is a young man that has deep roots in our community and has brought his young family here to live here, continuing the work on his family farm. He was unsatisfied with the choices presented to him in the by-election last year, so Thomas has decided to seek your support to be Bowmanville, Oshawa North's first MP under the Christian Heritage Party of Canada's banner. Today's guest at Exit 425.
In the main corridor of Exit 425.
Local politicians to connect with families.
What are some unique challenges?
Thanks very much, Steve, for having me.
Exit 425. It's where we live. Thomas, thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being here for part 2 of our conversation.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
How can we reconcile our northern climate and limited farmland? And we have about 1/8 of the arable farmland that the United States has, along with food security. How do we reconcile that with the need to build new homes, which is not to say it's being done well by anybody now? And then is there a more creative solution that respects the capacity to grow food? And this is something that every time I hear announcements about housing and development, all I can think of is this farmland all around us, which is why we live here, right? But as I used to teach my students, the same farmland that's great to grow food on is also the best place to plant houses. So, it's all the right conditions. So how do we reconcile all that? And the fact that I know one of our leaders sounds like he thinks we have just enormous quantities of farmland, but in reality, we have 1/8 the quality farmland that the United States has. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it is a major problem because also when it comes to where people want to build farmland is, yes, good for the actual building of the building, but that's also where the cities are and where the people want to congregate instead of like going up north maybe where there's less sun for crops to grow. And over the last 35 years, we have lost 18% of Canadian farmland, about 2.8 million acres. So it's a real problem. So I think from the food perspective of it, it's really important, like I said earlier, about where we're investing as a federal government, our research money. Right now, so much money is going into reducing methane emissions and carbon emissions. And you can devote some to that. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but we need to make our farming practices more efficient. How can we get our greenhouses to be able to grow more food so that we can have more of those vegetable products through the winter? Like you said, we are climate limited from that perspective. We can't grow in the winter unless you have a greenhouse. And I think from an agriculture perspective as a whole, we do have enough land for food security. The problem is it's like a lot of land that, we're not going to be growing cucumbers, tomatoes, and lettuce for our consumers. We're growing canola, soybeans, and corn, and we have a huge canola export, but then, we have an import of these vegetables. And so that's something where we're not going to turn Saskatchewan into a big cucumber province, but we need to figure out ways that we can still export that canola, but then also be able to have greenhouse growers expand and have the workers to do that, because that's something where we may have enough land to feed our population, but we don't have enough people willing to work those more menial jobs to get that food. And I think that's a real big difficulty facing growers, especially greenhouse growers. And even carbon tax, which is something that the government has said they're going to take away now. It's gone, but that's only for consumers. And so I was talking to a greenhouse grower, and he was saying that they shut down for the 4 winter months because they have to pay too much in carbon tax to make it worth running. And so instead, we're going to truck up vegetables from the US and Mexico to fill those orders. Talk about carbon emissions. That's going to be worse. And we're not producing for our own country. And so removing carbon tax fully, commercial and for personal, I think will be really key in being able to feed our country into the future, but also just being self-sufficient, I think is really important. And from the housing side of it, of Do we need to till under more land? I think if we keep largely the amount of land we have now, we should be fine. But how do we do that? And I think the Christian Heritage Party has a really good idea of some underlying problems that could help with the housing shortage, because most parties just slap on a Band-Aid fix. It's just, we need to build more houses. That's really not going to cut it. We're growing at such a rate with immigration and in general that you can't build enough houses to keep up. And so you're going to have a shortage. And so the Christian Heritage Party has four main things that I think will be key as a federal entity, where we can't build the houses ourselves because that's municipal, federal. As of right now, the government just says, well, we'll devote funding to it. Throwing money at a problem doesn't fix the problem. You need to look at the underlying problems. And so I would say one of those is reduce foreign investor spending, because you have people from other countries that are investing in property here and not necessarily putting anybody in to live on that property, but it's an investment. And so those are people that are increasing the market, the buying market, which raises prices. And they're outbidding young families. They're outbidding people like me that want to buy a home for an affordable price, but we get outbid. And so housing can make a good investment for a family, which is good. But the primary use of a house is for living in. And so if we reduce that foreign investor spending on these, reduce the foreign investing in general, we'll have more homes available for use at more affordable prices. And the second thing is, I think, something that's very unique to the Christian Heritage Party. And it's not something tangible you can say, we're going to legislate this and we're going to free up houses. But family unity is something that could be very key to helping with the housing crisis. Because if you think about it, when a family unit breaks and you have divorce, now you need two new homes. And we'll have kids at one for one weekend, the other weekend, whatever it is. And it doesn't always happen that way, but now you have two homes, so you've doubled your housing needs. And so if we can foster Canada where you have families that are able to spend more time together because they don't have to be working two jobs all day to make a living and make ends meet, that they could have maybe one person stay at home and have a family environment that's conducive for being a family and not just surviving. I think that would be very key, and focusing on, strong traditional marriage, because I find when I was a single man, I was much less apt to be paying close attention to my finances. But once I got into a relationship and I got married, then I had a child, my responsibility went up, up, up. And so I think that's something where if we focus on, traditional marriage and being able to grow as a family, you're going to have a more responsible population. And so I think if you can keep families together, that will help with the housing needs as well. And I've mentioned previously about immigration rates. The Christian Heritage Party believes that we should not end immigration like some people think. I'm here because of immigration. My grandparents moved from Holland. And so immigration can be a great thing in moving a country forward, but it has to be within reason. You have to figure out how many jobs you have and how much housing you have. And so I think to start, the Christian Heritage Party believes in reducing at least to pre-2020 levels. We were accepting about 250 to 300,000 immigrants every year. But since then, that's ballooned to over 500,000 per year. And that's insane. We can't be accepting that many people. We don't have enough space. And so we believe in reducing it to at least that amount. And then, no, we're not going to have promised this is the amount every year after that. It's flexible. That's something that you need to figure out your needs and your abilities. And the last thing is, I talked earlier about government funding to the provinces. That's still a key thing, but that needs to be tied to effective housing. Because when I see a farmer's field turned into a big luxury house, that frustrates me, because that you could use that for housing, fine, I accept that, but at least make it effective housing that's going to house multiple families for the future instead of just this one person. And so those are the 4 ways I think that the Christian Heritage Party could really help the housing crisis to use up less land from agriculture.
Appreciate that answer. The trade issues with the USA have made us more appreciative of Canada for now, but also more aware of our vulnerabilities. We've talked about a few of them: food security, that sort of thing. First of all, around jobs. Secondly, around energy and a renewed interest in the East-West pipeline trade and food security. How will your government address these issues?
The Christian Heritage Party believes that trade is a good thing, but you have to trade because you want to, not because you have to. And so even though trade is important, it's still important to be able to support your own country, which means with energy and with food. Is if you don't have control over those 2 things, then other people have control over you. And that's what we're seeing with the conflict we're having with the United States, is that we can't really do much because we are reliant on them. And to a certain extent, they're also reliant on us. So there's a bit of back and forth there. But we think that food security is a big issue because, like I mentioned earlier with the greenhouse growers, we're bringing up vegetables from the US, from Mexico. And if they say, no, we're not going to do that anymore, then you're stuck. And so you have to be able to provide yourself with food. And one of those things as well is beef. We don't have enough processing capacity for the beef cows in Canada. So every year we send about 500,000 cows to the United States, where they get processed and then sent back to Canadian stores. And so if they say, no, we're going to close the border, then, well, grocery prices are going to go way up, and we're going to have a shortage of quality protein. And so that's something, as a federal government, the CHP would need to invest in processing facilities and expanding the research into developing those in a sustainable way, because one of the difficulties with that industry is getting people to want to work there. It's not a great work environment. And so research really needs to happen in automation in that industry, and also helping it become a better work environment. So it's not just a throw money at a problem. You need to do more than just expand. But that's something we have no control over our food supply in that way yet. And the other thing I think is important is diversifying exports. Because oil is a key thing, that, especially, like you said, the East-West pipeline is something that's important. But then also there's a pipeline that was canceled by the Liberal government in 2016 called the Northern Gateway Pipeline. And that was to bring oil from Alberta to the West Coast to ship to other markets. But they canceled that, and now we ship 97% of our exports to the US for oil. And so we're reliant on them as a customer. If they don't buy our oil, or if we tariff it, they tariff it, we don't have a source of income. And so diversifying is really important. And I think when it comes to pipelines, it's a really difficult topic, because you have people who really care about the environment, people who just care about the money, and you need to find something in between. And I think we are in a position as Canadians that we have really good resources in planning for habitat management and trying to make it the least damaging route and the least damaging way of doing it. And so I think that's something that's important for Canada to do in the future. And I think as far as trades with the US, the parties are taking a very hard stance towards counter tariffs. And it's pretty popular from what I've heard in different conversations I've had. But if they tariff our goods, yes, we'll have certain industries that will struggle, but that hurts their people. And so to counter tariff, to hurt our economy, to get the government more revenue with tariff money, is ridiculous. It will hurt our economy even more. So in response to those tariffs, we need to be more self-sufficient, look into the problems that they're proposing are our problems on our border, like fentanyl coming in the Vancouver port. That's something that is a legitimate thing that we're not addressing. So look at those things. And I think that the President of the United States will continue to have a laundry list of things that he'll say 25% tariff, for the next 4 years. And so that's why we need to be more self-sufficient. But counter tariffing for the next 4 years will just hurt our economy so badly.
Literally cutting off your nose to spite your face or whatever the deal is, right? Like, you know, I like the idea of looking at diversifying your markets and where you can sell and purchase things from. In terms of pipelines, many people in Oshawa North particularly may not realize that there are two pipelines, an oil and a gas pipeline, that go right through that area. And probably not very far from your farm, we have pipelines that function that nobody really thinks about. So they're probably more innocuous than we think. Sure, there's the possibility of leaks and that sort of thing, but they can be contained a little bit better, and they're rare.
Especially compared to like the alternative is railway transport, which there's more instances of railway derailments and spills than pipeline spills.
And we could put tankers on the Great Lakes, perhaps, but that really destroys an environment if there's an issue there, and an ecosystem wherever it lands, and that's probably harder to rehabilitate than if it's on land somewhere. But I digress just a little bit. Last question here. So it's really impossible for the CHP of Canada to form a government with the number of candidates currently listed on your website. Whether you win or lose this seat, how will you continue to promote the agenda of the CHP in and out of Parliament?
Yes, you are right. We are one of the parties that's quite small comparatively to the mainline parties. And I'm excited to run as basically a foundation for the future so that we can have more candidates in the future. But also, I want to be a voice. I want to be a voice here at all candidates meetings, and if I win the seat, in Ottawa, because even if we have one seat and we don't have 100 or however many, I can be a voice for Bowmanville, Oshawa North, and the values that we stand for. And so I think for the Christian Heritage Party, right now we need to build a foundation, and every vote counts, because whether you vote for me because you agree with my policy and want me to win, or you want to vote for me to hold other parties accountable because they're not getting your vote, because they're not lining with how you believe things should go, that's a voice for you and a voice for the Christian Heritage Party to say these are things that are important.
Thomas, I really want to thank you for being here and meeting me here at Exit 425 today. I think you've demonstrated that the Christian Heritage Party of Canada is not some extremist weird party, that you've got a solid bundle of values and outlook on things that most Canadians can identify with. So I certainly appreciate you running. I've said that before, because this is a very courageous and a huge job, is to run for political office. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that are happening that people don't see, and just the work of canvassing, the work of organizing people to get your campaign sorted out. It's a lot of work, but like I said, it's very courageous. So good for you, and thank you so much for doing that and adding to the political process and the discussion. So once again, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for running.
Yeah, thank you for letting me share my vision for the Bowmanville Oshawa North riding and for Canada at Exit 425.
Thomas, how can people reach you and learn more about the Christian Heritage Party?
They can reach me on my website, chpthomas.ca, or reach me at my email, thomas.zekveld at chp.ca.
Thomas, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.